Good day, everybody. Today we're going to talk about creating a business, starting a business. Creating a business can be one of the most exciting adventures that just about anybody can take. You get to be your own boss, be your own person, make your own decisions, chart your own course in life. Few things are better than that. People do like control of their lives. It's always better if you can make your own decisions, pay for your own choices, and consequences as well. Is it easy to do? Sure. When you find out how many people actually have a business, you'd be surprised. Easy to start? Is it easy to complete? Easy to be successful? Of course not. Otherwise, everybody would work for themselves. And about half the workforce in the United States doesn't work for themselves. That, of course, means that the other half work in a small business of some sort. Closer to the action, closer to the decision making. But there's great promise in being a business owner. In fact, 2 out of every 3 millionaires that you meet, own a business. That's the advantages of owning a business. The consequence is it's much easier to be wealthy if you own a business than if you don't own a business. So let's start with the quote. I love quotes. I think they set the stage for what we're going to be talking about. And the first quote is, "What got you here will not get you there." And what I mean by that is, I'm going to talk about many different forms and formulas and processes as we talk about starting a business. My son likes computers. He loves to build computers. He's just started selling computers. My son's an engineer. And by virtue of the talent that he has in building a computer, he's been able to be somewhat of a success. However, if he wants to create a larger business, what has gotten to that point of success is not going to bring him over the line or make continued success, especially when you have to grow your business, when you have to expand and include other people, other departments, functions, in order to process and produce more product. So the same skills and talent that got you there aren't necessarily going to keep you there. That's why, with few exceptions, those individuals who found a business usually aren't the ones that run the business over the long term. They usually bring in professional managers, people who understand how to take a process and to make it efficient and effective so that you can produce more products and services that are indicative of why you started an organization in the first place. There are some that actually found a business and can actually run a larger business. Mark Zuckerberg is one. Steve Jobs is one. Though if you remember the first time he started a business, he didn't do so well. He learned how to manage a business as much as to become a visionary type person. He had both skills and traits. He became quite successful towards the end of his life. Here we're going to talk about the factors in a business, the most important factors that you need to consider when starting a business. We're going to look at the small business. We're going to look at how to run a good business as well. So let's start with the factors. The factors in starting a business include learning about the economy, researching the trends within your industry and outside the industry, assessing the resources that you'll need, determining your competitive edge, knowing how to market and advertise your product or to sell it, and lastly, the important aspect of time. Those are what we call the factors in starting a business. There's more, of course. Some are more important than others, of course. But we're going to try to talk about a representative sample of factors that we really should consider just about in any business that we create. I mentioned small businesses. When we start a business, we start as a small business. Very few businesses start with 2,000 employees. You start as a small business with the hope that whatever you're trying to sell is bought, and then you can reinvest in your business and at some point become a larger business. How dominant is small business in today's world? Kind of interesting. 99% of all businesses in the United States are small businesses. If you take every single business in the United States and you line them up from one to the very last one, there's actually 30 million of them if you see the next bullet. But there's 99% of all businesses, almost all businesses are what's called small businesses. They total about 30 million small businesses, and they employ about 60 million employees. Yes, that means that on average, each small business employs 2 people. The statistics change a bit, but that's a good way to look at how dominant small businesses are. Of new jobs, about 70% of all new jobs are created by small business. That stands to reason. When you look at how many small businesses there are, and you look at how many small businesses exist and create and populate over time, you see that we're always adding people to a business. And in fact, upwards of 50% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. So you can see that we're continually adding small businesses. Small businesses are the engine driver of an economy. So governments try as best they can to continue to promote the use of small businesses within just about any sector of the economy. Small businesses create about 50% of the total output of the economy. Most people think it's an IBM, a General Motors. They do create quite a bit, of course, of wealth, but small businesses have a large impact on our economy. 80% of small businesses have no employees. So remember we talked about 30 million small businesses have 60 million employees. When you think about 80 million, or 80% of those 30 million, which is 24 million, really have no employees. That tells you how many employees are left with those 6 million small businesses. 50% of small businesses operate from their home. Gardeners is a good example. Even architects and engineers, human resource professionals, they can all work from their home, starting as a consultant or a contractor. And 90% of businesses have fewer than 20 employees. 90% of businesses. That's quite amazing. Most people don't realize that. We are a small business world. So can you start a business? Which of course means, can you start a small business? You absolutely can. Hopefully, what we talk about in the coming minutes will help you along that way. That's certainly my ambition, is to help people learn how best to start a business and to demystify how difficult it can be. It's really not. And that's what we know about a small business. So let's talk about these factors that we referenced earlier, and now we'll talk in more detail now. The economy. One of the first things we want to look at is the economy. If the economy is not doing well, if you have high interest rates, as it says here, high inflation, again, as it says here, it may not be the best time to start a business. Why? Most times when you start a business, you have to borrow money, or at least the cost of capital, the cost of money, can be quite high. And therefore, your costs of starting a business are higher, therefore your risk is higher. So not many businesses, new businesses at least, get started during a period where there's high inflation and high interest rate. When money is cheaper, in other words, when you can borrow money, then it's easier to start a business because the costs are not as great, at least as you begin the firm, and then also as you continue the firm. When we talk about money supply, inflation, and interest rates, that's often the purview of the Federal Reserve. The federal government is in charge of what we call tax policy. The Federal Reserve is in charge of what we call monetary policy. Federal government, another word we use is fiscal policy. And that's taxes, regulations. Taxes have to do with spending. It's the opposite of taxes, right? And then there's also what we call debt. We mentioned here about interest rates. There's also unemployment rates. If you start a business when unemployment rates are lower, which means not many people are looking for a job, and you have to hire people, you can expect to pay more for the labor that you acquire. There's also regulations. Some states, for instance, like California, are heavily regulated. You have to go through many different statutes and rules and regulations in order to start a business. Fees are often higher too. So you typically want to open a business in a state that doesn't have a great deal of regulation. Regulation is another word for oversight. It's also another word for control. Other people may control the way you run your business. A good example of control is the minimum wage. And the minimum wage, if it's quite low, then it's easier for you to start a business. If it's higher, that regulation or control can impact your ability to start business. That is the economy. There's a quote I remember, which is, We must adapt to an unknown and unexpected future, one where ambiguity is present and certainty is suspect. Last part's the most important, right? Ambiguity is present and certainty is suspect. Such is the world in which we live. We live in a world where it's difficult to predict the future. Maybe at no point in time, at other times, has there been such uncertainty about what we can expect in the future. From higher taxes to higher debt, and to at least the concern that the plentiful good job may not exist, we can see that uncertainty is in a rising period of our country. Doesn't mean we don't need to start a business or want to start a business or can start a business. It just may mean we need to be a bit more thoughtful about when we start the business and the type of business that we start. That's why we started our very first discussion with the economy. Take a look at the economy. Don't let the economy derail you from following your ambitions to achieve your dream, but at least have the presence to understand the type of environment that you're going to be opening up your business in. Which leads us to the very next trend, which is actually trends. The very next factor that we talked about is about the trends that you need to associate with, the trends that you need to be aware of in order to make the decision on when, where, how, what, and why you want to open up a business. If we know about the economy, then we kind of move down from the economy and say, okay, besides the economic realm, what other trends should I be aware of? These are often check boxes. Okay, globalization, technology, work, competitors, customers. Those are aspects that you really should at least reference when you look at the determination to open up your business. Globalization is a dominating factor in our world. As we can see here, that in the 1800s, early 1800s, only about 2% of world trade was related to the GNP. By 1970, which is not that long ago, 28% of world GNP was related to globalization. Today, about 60%, 6 out of every $10 is either an import or an export. That means that what you produce or sell here in the United States often has a competitor in some other country. So we're selling our product not just to our neighbors, but we're selling them to other citizens in other countries. It means that we have to be much more competitive. Technology is again dominating. Technology has allowed globalization to assume the role that it has in our world. One statistic, which is quite telling, is that 88% of jobs lost are because we don't need employees anymore. We don't need employees because we have robots and artificial intelligence. In fact, each robot eliminates 6 jobs, and we expect to have about 15 million robots in the very near future. Work, the nature of work. We note that people just aren't driving or going to work, to the workplace, to the office, as much as they used to. Certainly COVID had some impact on that, but the trend was starting. Now we see that about 17% of commerce sales are e-commerce, through the mail or through the internet. 25% of restaurant sales are takeout, and in fact 15% of us now work remotely. That's 4 times more than just 2019. It's a very interesting statistic. As an aside, when we think about starting a business, we should keep in mind that people don't associate with each other as much as they used to. People don't eat with each other as much as they used to. They don't work with each other as much as they used to. If we were doing a different presentation, I'd talk about how many of these social clubs are losing members, like the Elks and the Lions and the Rotary. They don't have as many members as they used to 10 and 20 and 30 years ago. People are becoming much more remote. It's not just the work is remote, but people are more remote. We should keep that in mind as we start a business. We look at our competitors. We try to find out, and we'll talk more about this, who our competitors are, what they're good at, what they're bad at. We don't necessarily make decisions, but we want to know a little bit about our competitors. We want to know our customers. Who's going to buy our products? What do they want? What can't they get? If they had a magic wand, so to speak, what would they produce? At what price? And sell it where? And the last part The last trend is, what are you missing? Just ask yourself, what am I missing? If I see an opportunity by opening this business, why isn't anybody else? We'll talk more about that as well, too. Quite interesting, right? And it brings us to the third one. This is often the first, but it's resources. And by first, I mean money. Most people say you can't start a business without money. We now know that's not true. If 50% of small businesses are out of the home, you don't need that much to start a business. In fact, as we get to talking about marketing and advertising in just a little bit, we can see that all you really need is a computer and some internet, and you can sell just about anything. It's really a great time if you want to open up a business. The days of having to get office space and even employees, or even to hire somebody to sell it, they're largely gone. But by money, you do need some startup money, some lines of credit, some credit cards, some borrowing, if not savings. The second resource is to be different, is to think of something. This really is a resource because it's the thought, it's the imagination. It is what I consider the basic building block of a company. What do you do that no one else does? What do you do that no one else can? And that leads us to guts. It's a great saying here that says, ideas won't keep. Something needs to be done about them. Great statement. Ideas won't keep. Something needs to be done about them. So no matter the money, no matter what the idea that you have, you got to do something with it. That's where guts come in. The final resource we hope to have is access. Interesting one, right? Access is to the right people, the right contractors, the right employees. We often call it talent, but have access to the people who can help you. If you want to start a business like my son and doing computers, you may know how to build a computer, but you may not know how to sell it. You may not know how to transport it. You have to find somebody who has that kind of knowledge. You may not know how to collect the taxes and to do the financial statements that you may need, especially as you grow your business. That's the talent that you need. And having access to those individuals can be a great enabler to the business becoming even more successful. Remember I talked about being different? Let's talk about that. And the fourth factor is competitive edge. Any business has to do something better that no one else does. I've given you a couple of examples here. Cheaper, status, faster, quality, features. We'll talk about each one, right? Cheaper. That's how Walmart, that's their competitive advantage. That what they do better than anybody is that they're cheaper. They have a lower margin, which means the difference between their costs and their sales are low. So they sell more, and that's how they make so much revenue. Costco does the same thing. Some firms sell fewer products and charge more for them. Some of your higher-end stores, like Neiman Marcus or Macy's, they sell fewer products, but they charge more for them. They have a wider margins. That's their competitive edge. Status. A competitive edge may be status. A shirt for Hermes could be a t-shirt. It runs about $300. A button-down shirt is about $400 to $500. Is it that much better than the others? Who's to say? But by virtue of wearing those shirts, it dictates and transmits a certain status. People are willing to pay for the status that wearing something with the name of Hermes on it, or Gucci, seems to convey to other people. Faster, of course, Lamborghini and Ferrari come right to the forefront. Those cars start in the hundreds of thousands and go into the millions. They're seen as some of the fastest vehicles ever built, getting faster every year. There's a premium, a price that's paid for that, and that's their competitive edge. If you want a fast car, those are typically the cars you make. If you want the world's most luxurious type of car, you're probably going to go for a Rolls Royce, somewhere in that category. Quality. People pay for quality. Some people, not all people. Better materials. I'll pay for leather, but maybe not for vinyl. Better sound, better picture. If something's better, there's people that may pay for it. Leads us to features. Okay, your competitive edge may be the type of feature that you offer. We'll deliver to your door. In fact, you see quite a few pharmacists delivering now. personal design will tailor that product to your specific needs. Even service. There's other types of competitive edge, and we've shown to the right of the slide what some of them are. Brand loyalty, patents, timing, cost advantage, which goes with cheaper, an exclusive license, which means you're the only one that can sell that product. One factor to remember when we talk about competitive edge is this: you must offer something that no one else does. When you start a business, at the forefront of your mind has to be, my product will succeed because my product does this and no one else does. It reminds me of this statement. It says we can't do everything, but we can do something. I love the word something. And that's why I put this phrase in here. Make sure that your product has something. It can't have everything. It can't have quality and service. But it could have something. And that something could be something that people are willing to pay for. And it leads us to factor 5, which is to sell it. This is kind of the fun aspect, because marketing and sales are really interesting processes. Those who get a marketing degree in college find it one of the most adventurous types of learnings that they've had. It's all about imagination, right? And those with the greatest imaginations can be quite effective marketers. We know, as we said earlier, ideas don't keep. Something needs to be done about it. I included that statement here to remember that at some point, all of your work, all your ideas come to an end. That end is a product or service. Then you have to do something with it. You have to find out, as it says here, where your customers are. And once you find out where your customers are, you have to give them a reason to buy it. Well, maybe it's cheaper. Maybe it's faster. Find your customer and then find out why they should buy it. One of the most advantageous aspects of starting a business today is that it's quite easy to do it. Earlier I referenced that you only need a room in your house or even a dining room table. And you need access to the internet, which in many cities is free. Certainly at your library is free. And that will allow you to sell on anything from eBay to just about any other forum. There are fees associated with it, but not great ones. And as you go to sell, just make sure you remember, what is your hook? Again, going back to that competitive advantage, what do you do that no one else does? That brings us to the very last factor, which is time. You need time to learn the business. Ownership requires a person to do so much more than just bake a cake, so much more than just build a computer. You have to hire staff, create processes, create financial systems, learn regulations, develop contracts between you and employees, between you and your vendors. It also means balancing this task amongst others. We all have families and friends, and we also have fun too. And now we have to balance that with this new ambition, which, at least in the initial phase, is going to consume a person's thoughts, actions, and behaviors. As you start to learn to balance all of these spokes in a wheel, make it easier. Certainly when you start a business, that all-consuming desire to succeed can certainly overtake some of your other obligations and ambitions. But during this time, we need to remember that while dreams may be worthwhile, they're worthless unless we achieve them. Having the idea of owning your own business is great, but you got to be able to achieve it. So that is what we look for in the strategies to follow in creating our own business. Here I look at 4 key aspects to remember about success, and that is, you got to have a customer. Makes sense, right? Second is you have to have talent. You have to find talent. Whether it's in HR, insurance, or real estate agents, there could be friends and family, but somebody with talent. Find a customer, find talent. Next is to do it better. It's the same as you have to have that hook. Do something better than anybody else. And the last I wanted to spend a minute on, which is be kind. I talk about kindness a lot because you want to work for a person who's kind. customers want to shop at stores that are kind, that they feel that they can trust. And while we may do work over the internet and we may not spend as much time with people as we would like, we still have interactions with people. And those interactions can convey to other people the type of person we are. I think we should be the business that creates a more caring world, where kindness and generosity are the rule and not the exception, and where a giving heart, a thoughtful gesture, and a sunny disposition are the hallmarks of a better business. One who's working to build a decent and honorable society that will, we hope, last through the ages. Be kind. So the 4 keys are: find a customer, find talent, do something better that no one else does, and then just remember to be kind. More than anything, if you can, dream it, which we talked about, sacrifice for it, talked about, risk for it, again we talked about, work for it. If you can do those 4 aspects, you then have a chance to make it. Those who make it have dreamt of it, they have the idea, have sacrificed for it, they worked for it, is part of sacrifice, they save for it, and then they took a risk, they took a chance. It may not always work out, but over time, I think it will. You may have stumbling blocks here and there, otherwise everybody would own a business. But what I try to convey to other people is if you can dream it, sacrifice for it, risk for it, and work for it, then at least you have a chance to make it. Without doing that, you really don't have a chance at all. One other comment, which is the last slide. I have the statement that says, everything ends, it's just a matter of when. It's not meant to be a negative comment. It just means that everything ends, it's just a matter of when. If we know that everything ends, I'm hoping that it encourages everybody to take a chance. Oliver Wendell Holmes said one time, many people die with their music still in them. I've always said that's a true tragedy. What should we do? Listen politely to the worries and criticisms of others, and do your best to put their minds at ease. But then, carry on. Listen last to your own heart, so at the end of your life, your song will be sung. Starting a business is not as difficult as we thought. Hopefully, I've given you some ideas on how to do it. Now, it's up to you to do it. Enjoy the journey, everybody. Take care.